Okay, so code pin number 4. That is a trip to the memory lane, or trip to the evolution of the for loop, or the loop in general. So let's start from the very first case of our first loop, probably the oldest one. It's a C-style for loop. It just goes, which has integer as an index. In fact, this is effectively int, right? And it goes from 0 to the size of the array, and then it does something. In this case, this is just a bogus function. In this case, I'm just accumulate the array. That's not really important. The important is to see how many ways can we write this for loop. So this is old school. It's fine, it just works. But if you want to something a little bit more modern, you can have a range-based loop, which is basically from now on you could avoid having an integer index to access your array. You just use this very strange column syntax, and basically this value becomes your array with index, right? And it basically loop the whole array, and it just returns, it gives you the values one by one. So this is actually the same loop, but instead of adding the array with the index, it just adds this value, and it's much better because you cannot be mistaken. Like, you can do stuff like just like you always sure the value is the actually current value that's been iterated through the array, and it's also smaller to write. So this is my favorite one. Now another one, if you're really like C++ 98 nuts, and by the way, this is true for most of the languages, right? Most of the languages has most of these cases. Now this is a very ugly case which I hated since the very first beginning. It's a for loop in which you use iterators to access the values. So there is this very horrible array and end, begin and end, and you do this ++ it, which stands for iterator, and then in order to access the iterator, you just have to do this strange dereference. You cannot just do just use the variable itself. You need to dereference. This is just like probably even worse than this. This is error prone, but this is just nasty. The ultimate way that you should really do a for loop is to use algorithms, and in this case with the standard library for each, they still have this bloody annoying array begin and end, which it's something that C++ really likes to have. Make sure that you start and end somewhere. But basically the difference with this one is that you declare a function which is the body of your loop, and this is a lambda function. Basically it's just an inline function, you see. And the reason why this is better than the rest, is architecturally better, is because it exposes you a function. It forces you to use a function, because if you notice here, all this scope here, they are just basically body of a function. So it will just avoid you from having code repetition if you have a lot of code that does this line here. Then there's no reason to rewrite it every time. You just would use a function. So this is a lot more robust, and this is something that you should really use, but personally I prefer to use this one because it's just, look at the number of characters, it's less, so I still prefer this one. But the very ultimate one, which is gets very close to the range-based loop, is the range-based argument, in which the for each, oh, by the way, this is only available in C++20, and I don't have C++20 on my streaming machine, so this is why this is red. But there is, so basically the for each in a range, it will let you basically avoid writing begin and end. So if you just say, okay, just for each of the array, because what is the point of having a for each otherwise? So I don't know why they waited until C++20 to really do it, but to me it was always, you know, the first thing that came to my mind. So, and this is exactly the same. He has a function to evaluate that. So, I mean, this is very close to be perfect. Although there is still, you know, like, it's still a lot of time to type, and for me this is still unbeatable, really. So this is basically a lot of ways that you can do exactly the same thing. And bonus point, there is an even better way, but it's pretty nasty, which is using algorithms, right? So this is just as two values, right? So what you would do, you would just use an algorithm that does it for you. And unfortunately, the syntax is a bit wrong. It's you know, well, wrong. It's a bit sloppy, really. It just goes back to this begin and end thing. But this is basically say, okay, the function that I'm using for this argument is to accumulate. So that will work, but in theory, if you were the perfect programmer, you would just use algorithms whenever you need to. But still, this one for me is the best one.